Okay, so today we're going to dive into this really interesting stuff in the LPot community, all about how they see living alone
Mm.
as this like empowering thing.
It is.
And they focus a lot on setting boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
which I think makes a ton of sense.
Well, yeah.
We've got a bunch of their material here we're going to dig into.
Awesome.
And for anyone listening who's living solo, this is definitely for you.
Absolutely.
So I think what really stood out to me right away is how they don't present boundaries as this like defensive thing.
Right.
It's not about like walling yourself off from the world. It's more like
proactive.
yeah, like taking control and shaping your life and your interactions to support you.
Totally. It's about like being intentional,
Okay.
with your time and your energy.
So why do you think the LPOC community puts so much emphasis on boundaries specifically for people living alone?
Well, I think it comes down to the fact that when you live alone, you're responsible for everything, right? Like
Yeah.
all the decisions, big and small,
All the chores.
the chores, the errands, the cooking.
Yep.
And all of that can be really draining if you don't have good boundaries in place.
And they talk about how important it is to protect your peace, your energy, your well-being.
Yes. Especially when you're living solo, those moments of peace and quiet, they're like gold.
I totally agree with that.
They're essential for recharging.
Yeah.
But without clear boundaries, it's so easy for those moments to get eaten up
Yeah.
by, like unexpected visitors or calls or just like the general demands of life.
Absolutely.
And then you end up feeling constantly on edge and stressed out.
So it sounds like the LPOC community is really recognizing the unique challenges and opportunities that come with solo living.
Exactly. And they're saying, hey, you've got this chance to really create a life that works for you,
Yeah.
but you need to be intentional about setting boundaries so that you can actually enjoy that freedom and autonomy.
And that makes sense because I think a lot of people are drawn to living alone in the first place because of that sense of freedom.
Right.
Yeah. So it's not about giving that up. It's about protecting it.
Yeah, it's like setting yourself up for success.
I like that. Okay, so let's talk about some practical stuff.
Okay.
How does the LPOC community suggest people figure out where to even start with boundaries?
Well, they talk a lot about the importance of self-awareness,
Okay.
like really understanding your own personal and emotional limits.
How would they say you do that?
Well, they have a few suggestions. One is to think about situations that consistently leave you feeling drained.
Huh.
Like maybe at certain social gatherings or certain types of conversations.
Or maybe it's dealing with a certain person.
Yeah, exactly. And once you start to identify those patterns, you can start to think about, okay, what kind of boundaries do I need to put in place to protect myself in those situations?
They also talk about literally writing things down.
Yes, journaling is a big one for them.
Yeah,
They suggest keeping a journal to track your triggers.
that makes sense.
So, what are the things that consistently set you off or make you feel overwhelmed?
And then you can start to plan around those.
Exactly.
And there were some other interesting ideas too. Like they talk about assessing your social energy.
Right.
Like, are you someone who needs a lot of alone time to recharge after being around people?
Totally.
Which I think is a really important thing to know about yourself.
Yeah.
Because if you don't know that, then you might end up overcommitting yourself socially.
Be burning out. Yeah.
Exactly.
And another thing they suggest is making a list of acceptable and unacceptable behaviors from others.
Like, what do you mean?
Like literally writing down, what are the things that people do that you're okay with and what are the things that are absolute no-goes for you?
Well, that's a good idea.
It can be really helpful to have that clarity.
Yeah, so you can communicate it to people.
Exactly. Because here's the thing, knowing your boundaries is only half the battle.
Right.
The other half is actually communicating them to others.
Yeah, and that's where a lot of people struggle.
It can be tough.
Yeah.
But the LPot community, they really stress that boundaries need to be communicated directly and respectfully.
Yeah, you can't expect people to just magically know what your boundaries are.
Yeah, you have to tell them.
And do they have any advice for how to do that effectively?
Oh, yeah, they have tons of tips. One thing they emphasize is practicing assertive communication.
Like, what does that even mean?
Well, it basically means being able to express your needs and wants in a clear and confident way.
Without being aggressive.
Exactly.
It's like finding that sweet spot.
Yes, and they suggest maybe even rehearsing some phrases for those conversations that you anticipate being tricky.
That's a good idea.
Like if you know you need to tell your friend that you can't make it to their party,
Right.
you can practice what you're going to say beforehand.
So you don't get flustered in the moment.
Right.
And they also talk about the classic I statements.
Yes, those are so helpful.
Yeah, instead of saying, you're always interrupting me.
Which can feel accusatory.
Yeah.
You can say, I find it difficult to focus when I'm interrupted.
Much better.
It's about focusing on your own experience.
Right, and not blaming the other person.
Exactly.
So I think a really important part of boundary setting, and something that the LPot community talks about a lot, is learning to say no without feeling guilty.
Oh, that's huge.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people, especially women,
Yeah.
are socialized to be people pleasers
Absolutely.
and to put other people's needs before their own.
And that can really make it harder to set boundaries because
Yeah.
you feel like you're letting people down.
But the LPot community is saying, hey, you know, it's okay to prioritize yourself.
It's not selfish. It's necessary.
And I think that's such an important message.
Yeah.
Because if you're not taking care of yourself, you can't take care of anyone else.
Exactly.
So how do they suggest people get better at saying no?
Well, one thing they say is to just practice saying it. Like literally just say the word no out loud.
To yourself.
Yeah, to yourself in the mirror, whatever it takes to get comfortable with the word.
That's
And they also suggest like role-playing those scenarios where you need to decline a request.
okay.
So you can practice saying no in a firm, kind way.
And I think a really important reminder that they offer is that you don't always need to provide a lengthy explanation or apology when you say no.
Yes, a simple no thank you is often sufficient.
It is.
You don't owe anyone a justification for taking care of yourself.
So I think what's so empowering about the LPot community's approach to boundaries is that they're really framing it as this act of self-care.
Absolutely.
It's not about being mean or selfish.
No.
It's about taking responsibility for your own well-being.
And creating a life that you love.
Exactly. So the big takeaway here is that setting and respecting boundaries is crucial for anyone living alone.
Yes.
It's about protecting your peace, your energy, and your overall well-being.
And it's about empowering yourself to create a life that truly aligns with your values.
So as we wrap up here, I want to leave you with a final thought. Think about one area in your life right now where setting a clearer boundary could bring you more peace and control.
That's a good one.
What's one small, actionable step you could take today towards establishing that boundary for yourself?
Love it.
That's all for this deep dive. Thanks for listening.